The story of Adrian and Elena began long before either of them could even open their eyes to the world. On the very same day, at the very same hour, in two different rooms of the same grand hospital, their cries echoed into the night as if heaven had written their names side by side. Adrian was born into a comfortable home, his father a hard-working man who served faithfully as the personal assistant to one of the country's most powerful billionaires. Elena, on the other hand, came into the world wrapped in silk and gold, the beloved daughter of that very billionaire. Fate had already tied them together, even before they were old. Adrian and Elena grew as though tethered by invisible strings. Though Elena's mansion gleamed with chandeliers and fountains, her footsteps often carried her across town to Adrian's modest home. There, she found warmth. There, she found belonging. There, she found him. Adrian's mother raised them side by side, often calling them her two children. They studied together, fought like siblings, shared secrets under the stars, and whispered promises too deep for their young hearts to explain. They were inseparable. Two souls knit together by destiny. But fate is rarely gentle with those chosen for great trials. Elena's childhood was filled with stories told at her mother's side. She and her mother were inseparable, talking not just as parent and child but as best friends. In her laughter was the reflection of her mother's joy, and in her silence was the echo of her mother's worries. They shared secrets, songs, and soft whispers in the night. But as the years passed, shadows grew around the bright corners. At 12, Elena was already striking in a way that made strangers pause. Her body matured faster than her years, curved and delicate, alluring yet innocent. Her face, however, betrayed her youth, the roundness of a child still etched into her cheeks, the light of childhood still in her eyes. That contrast was her curse. It caught the wrong kind of attention, and one evening, it came to her doorstep in a way that would forever scar her. That night began like any other. Elena sat reading novels in her room, her mother's voice still lingering in her ears from their earlier talks. Then came the voice, a strange male voice echoing from downstairs. Curious, she stepped quietly into the hallway, heart fluttering, and peered down. It was one of her Aunt Necker's friends, a man with heavy eyes that lingered on her too long, his gaze crawling across her young frame. She froze under his stare, feeling naked in her own skin. She turned quickly, retreating to her room, shutting the door, her heart racing. She tried to lose herself in her books, tried to pretend the unease was only in her mind. But sleep came for her, deep and heavy. And then, darkness. She woke to it. The lights were off, the curtains drawn, the door shut tight. A whisper brushed against her ear, low and chilling, "I'll take it slow on you." Elena turned, her breath caught in her throat. There he was, her aunt's friend, right beside her, his hand brushing her waist. Panic burst in her chest. She screamed, but his hand clamped over her mouth. Her small frame fought against him, her fists hitting, her body twisting, but he was stronger, larger. Tears burned her face as his hand roamed, her muffled cries swallowed by the night. Downstairs, Necker lay in a drugged haze, unaware, useless. But Elena refused to surrender. Her eyes darted desperately, searching, until they found her biro on the desk. With every ounce of terror-fueled strength, she snatched it and drove it into his ear. His scream was guttural, blood pouring down his neck. She stumbled back, horror-stricken at the sight, but survival pushed her legs forward. She ran, out of the room, down the stairs, trembling as she nearly tripped over her aunt's unconscious body on the floor. Her calls to her mother went unanswered. Her father too. Her small fingers pressed the bell in frantic rhythm until a maid appeared. The driver was summoned. Without another word, she demanded to be taken to the second house. There, Adrian was. And as soon as she saw him, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing into his shoulder. Adrian held her, confused but protective, wrapping her in the kind of safety only he could offer. They had not shared a bed since they were toddlers, but that night, Adrian's mother let them. He stayed by her side, not out of childish play but out of something deeper, something unspoken. She finally slept, her face streaked with tears, trusting only him. The next morning, Adrian sat with her as she poured out the story, every horrific detail. He listened without interruption, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with a rage too mature for his years. His mother, upon hearing, wasted no time. Together, they returned to Elena's house. But what they found shocked them. Everything was clean. The room where blood had spilled was spotless. The bed remade. The curtains perfect. It was as if no struggle had ever occurred. And Neka? Nowhere to be found. Elena's mother rushed back from her travels, horrified. They brought Elena to the family hospital for tests, for comfort. Adrian never left her side. At night, he sat by her bed, watching her chest rise and fall, as if his presence could guard her from nightmares. Her parents came, relieved to see her, and insisted she recover at home under a doctor's care. But Elena was different now. Stronger, sharper. When Neka was finally found, trying to flee, she denied everything. She claimed none of her friends had visited that night, claimed Elena must have imagined it. She even called on the driver and maid to testify that she had driven Elena to Adrian's house the next morning. The betrayal cut deep. For a moment, Elena wondered if she had lost her mind. But Adrian spoke, his voice steady. He recounted the events exactly as she had told them, standing firm like a witness, like he had been in the room. Her parents checked the cameras. Nothing. Every trace of evidence erased. And so, with fury burning, Elena gathered the staff, demanded to know who cleaned the room, who touched the duvet, who wiped away the blood. Silence. Denials. Lies. And then, her voice broke like thunder, "You are all fired." Her parents were stunned. They had never seen their daughter so fierce, so commanding. Her mother wept, holding her, singing softly to soothe her, but Elena would not yield. Neka was arrested, the staff dismissed. Elena clung to Adrian's arms, whispering that she could never live without him. The family pressure was immense. Relatives demanded her mother release Neka, begged her to reconsider. But Elena's mother, torn though she was, refused. "My daughter's word is final," she said. And in that silence, she lost a part of Elena too, the part that once believed her mother would always choose her side. Days later, the truth surfaced. Neka, under pressure, confessed. Her boyfriend, the same man Elena had stabbed, was still nursing the wound. He had bled, he had suffered, but he had lived. The shame was heavy, the disappointment in the parents' eyes unbearable. And in that moment, Elena knew, her life would never again be the same. Elena's world shifted after that night. The brightness in her laughter dimmed, replaced by shadows no one but Adrian seemed to see. Though her parents did their best, surrounding her with doctors, love, and comfort, she no longer trusted the world so easily. The betrayal of her aunt, the silence of the staff, the disbelief from her own father, it carved wounds that no medicine could heal. But Adrian was different. He stayed. He did not question her words, nor soften the truth with dismissals. When she spoke, he listened. When she broke down, he steadied her. Their bond grew from that shared pain, forged in the fire of something children should never have faced, yet there it was, unyielding, unbreakable. One night, as they sat in the quiet of Adrian's family home, Elena whispered, "I will never do life without you." She didn't look at him when she said it, her eyes fixed on the stars through the window. But Adrian heard. And in his young heart, he made a promise, though he did not yet understand the weight, that he would never let her walk alone. Her parents, desperate to protect her, grew stricter. Elena was tutored at home for a season, her world limited to books, music, and rare visits. Yet it was in those days that her ambitions began to bloom. She read endlessly, novels, biographies, even her father's business books. She dreamed not only of healing but of becoming someone the world would have to listen to, someone no one could silence the way they tried to silence her truth. Adrian's mother became a steady presence, offering Elena a gentleness her own mother sometimes could not. Where her mother grew anxious and protective, Adrian's mother offered calm wisdom, prayers whispered into Elena's ear as she braided her hair. It was no wonder Elena clung so tightly to Adrian, he was her safety, and his mother became a second shield around her fragile spirit. But even as Elena healed, shadows of doubt lingered. At times, she questioned herself. At other times, she questioned God. Why had he let her hear a voice that led her downstairs that night? Why had her cries gone unanswered when she screamed for help? Yet each time she faltered, Adrian's faith in her steadied her steps. The family, though fractured by the scandal, tried to move on. Neka's betrayal cut deepest of all. Though her parents forgave her, Elena never truly did. She had learned a hard truth, even blood could fail you. Even family could wound you deeper than any stranger. From then on, her fire only grew. She spoke her mind freely, even to her parents. When she said someone would be fired, they were fired. When she demanded justice, she got it. She was no longer the girl who could be silenced by fear. She was Elena, the girl who would fight to the last breath for her truth. And always, Adrian was beside her. Watching. Waiting. Loving in silence. Adrian and Elena grew like two vines twisted together, inseparable yet different. Where Adrian's family lived with modest comfort, Elena's father's wealth towered above them all. Her home was filled with servants, chandeliers, and imported luxuries, but Adrian's world was quieter, simpler. Still, Elena always found herself preferring his space. It was where she could breathe, where she could laugh without judgment, where she could be herself and not the heiress. At school, the differences between them showed more sharply. Elena was always at the center of attention, her beauty, her confidence, her brilliance. Boys whispered about her, girls tried to copy her. But she only had eyes for Adrian, though she never said it out loud. To her, he was more than a friend, more than comfort, he was her anchor. Adrian, though, felt the weight of their different worlds. His father worked as a trusted aide to Elena's father, and while he was respected, Adrian knew he could never match Elena's status. He admired her quietly, loved her fiercely in the silence of his own heart, and promised himself he would one day be worthy of her. Evenings often found them side by side, Elena sprawled on the couch with a novel, Adrian sketching ideas in his notebook, or helping her solve equations she pretended to struggle with just to keep him near. Sometimes, when she caught him staring at her, she would laugh and tease, "Adrian, are you daydreaming again?" He would shake his head quickly, embarrassed, but deep inside, he dreamed not of numbers or books, but of her. Their bond did not go unnoticed. Adrian's mother saw it. Elena's mother saw it too, but her reaction was different. She loved her daughter, but she had ambitions, plans that reached beyond mere love. To her, Adrian was good, yes, but he was not enough. Elena deserved someone powerful, someone whose wealth could match or surpass their own. Yet in those teenage years, none of that mattered. To Elena and Adrian, the world was theirs. They laughed, they fought, they dreamed. They spoke of futures where nothing could tear them apart. Elena often whispered into the night, "Promise me, Adrian, you won't ever leave me." And though he said nothing, his silence was louder than words, it was a vow. But destiny, as always, was already weaving its own threads. New freedom, and new temptations. Adrian chose to study locally so he could stay close to his mother and, of course, Elena. But Elena's parents, especially her mother, had other ideas. She must study abroad, her mother insisted, her voice carrying the weight of command. It's the best for her future. Adrian could do nothing but watch Elena pack her bags. He tried to be strong, smiling as he carried her suitcase to the car, but his chest felt heavy. At the airport, Elena clung to him, whispering, "Don't let me go, Adrian." He swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "I'll be right here, waiting." She boarded the plane, and Adrian's world dimmed. At first, distance seemed conquerable. They sent long texts, spent hours on late-night calls, their voices filling the empty spaces of their hearts. Adrian saved money just to send her small gifts, a bracelet, a book, a letter scented faintly of home. Elena cherished each one. For a while, love endured. But time has a way of stretching hearts thin. Elena's mother had been watching quietly, biding her time. When she saw Adrian struggling with his studies, pouring all his energy into waiting for her daughter, she decided it was time to cut the cord. That was when Williams appeared. Williams was no accident, he was her mother's carefully chosen friend of the family. Wealthy, polished, with connections abroad, he was everything Adrian was not. He offered Elena convenience, luxury, and the approval of her mother. At first, Elena resisted him. She thought of Adrian, of his promises, of the way his arms had once been the safest place in the world. But Williams was persistent. He introduced her to new circles, new pleasures. He was charming, he was relentless, and most dangerously, he was endorsed by her mother. Soon, the friendship blurred into late nights, into drinks, into experiments she had once sworn never to touch. Adrian noticed the change. Calls grew shorter. Messages fewer. When she answered, her voice often carried laughter he wasn't part of. He tried to ask, "Are you okay, Elena?" But she always brushed him off. "I'm just busy, Adrian." You wouldn't understand. And then came the night that broke him. Elena confessed, her voice slurred with shame and tears. She had slipped. Williams had dragged her into parties, into drugs, into a lifestyle she couldn't control. Adrian's chest burned with helpless anger. He wanted to fly across the ocean, to tear Williams away from her, to rescue her like he always did. But for the first time in his life, he was too far. Elena spiraled deeper. She tried to numb her pain by numbing herself. More drugs, more recklessness. When she caught Williams cheating with other women, her heart snapped. Out of anger and misplaced vengeance, she too began to cheat, thinking it would make her feel powerful. Instead, it left her emptier than ever. Adrian, back home, prayed. He prayed until his knees were sore, begging God to bring her back to him. But the silence on the other end of the line grew heavier, until it felt like she had vanished into another world. Elena returned to Nigeria not with triumph, but with shame wrapped around her like a second skin. She stepped off the plane a shadow of the girl who had left. Once radiant and full of promise, now her eyes carried a dullness, her cheeks hollowed, her spirit crushed by choices she regretted with every breath. Her mother met her at the airport, pretending not to see the trembling hands, the tired eyes, the scars left by reckless nights. Instead, she smiled proudly, introducing Elena as her precious daughter who conquered the world. But Adrian saw through it all. The moment he laid eyes on her again, his chest tightened. This wasn't the Elena he knew. He rushed forward, holding her hands. "Lena," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She forced a smile, but her lips quivered. That night, alone in his room, she broke down. She told him everything, about the drugs, about Williams, about how she had tried to destroy herself when she caught him with other women. Adrian didn't interrupt. He simply pulled her into his arms, letting her sob until dawn. Days turned into weeks. Adrian was her shadow, her protector, her quiet healer. He cooked for her, sat beside her when the cravings for substances clawed at her, prayed over her when nightmares jolted her awake. Adrian's love was no longer the innocent fondness of childhood. It was sacrificial, patient, consuming. One evening, as rain fell softly outside, Elena whispered, "Why do you still care for me, after all I've done?" Adrian looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because you're still you, Elena. And I've always loved you." That night, they crossed a boundary neither had dared before. For the first time, Elena surrendered herself to him, not as the broken girl Williams had used, but as the woman Adrian had always cherished. Their union was tender, filled with years of longing finally finding release. Elena wept in his arms afterward, not out of regret, but out of relief, because for the first time in years, she felt safe again. But safety didn't erase reality. Adrian soon discovered the depth of Elena's addiction. He found the pills she had hidden, saw the tremors when she tried to quit, felt the distance when her cravings overpowered her will. Desperate to prove his loyalty, he made the worst decision of his life. He joined her. If this was her world, he thought, then he would step into it too. It was love, but it was reckless love. Adrian began taking the same drugs, not because he wanted them, but because he wanted her. Elena begged him to stop, but she was too fragile to pull him out, and he was too stubborn to let her drown alone. Their bond deepened, but so did their destruction. And then Williams returned. Like a ghost from the past, he reappeared with his usual arrogance, dragging Elena back into old temptations. Adrian's heart shattered when he found out. But the final blow came when a sex tape, filmed without Elena's consent, landed in his hands. Adrian stared at the screen, rage and heartbreak tearing him apart. He slammed the laptop shut, his hands trembling. Elena collapsed at his feet, begging for forgiveness, swearing it was a mistake, that she had been tricked, used. Adrian wanted to believe her, but the image was burned into his soul. From that moment, everything shifted. Adrian's love for her remained, but trust had cracked. And trust, once broken, is the hardest thing to heal. The sex tape shattered Adrian's soul, but nothing prepared him for the day he saw Elena with his own eyes. He had gone to meet her, desperate for answers, clinging to the last shred of hope that the video was a lie. But when he opened the door, there she was, in another man's arms. His breath caught. His world froze. "Elena," his voice cracked like glass. She turned, guilt written across her face, but it was too late. Adrian's heart broke in silence. He staggered backward, his chest burning, his mind screaming. For the first time, he realized love could truly kill. That night, he vanished. His phone went dark, his friends couldn't reach him, even his mother searched every corner of Lagos in vain. Days turned into weeks, rumors swirling. Some whispered he had traveled, others feared he had taken his own life. And then, one morning, his driver found his phone lying at the edge of the lagoon. Panic consumed his family. His mother fainted at the thought that her son had drowned himself. Search parties combed the waters, but no body was found. Only silence. His mother prayed day and night, begging God for mercy. Her heart ached with guilt. She went to Elena, her eyes swollen from tears. "What did you do to my son?" she whispered, her voice trembling between rage and grief. Elena had no words, only sobs. "I begged you to protect him," Adrian's mother said, "but you destroyed him." And yet, love does not die easily. It was not the police or the family who found him, it was the dog. 4 days, their loyal pet barked endlessly at the kennel. At first, no one understood, until the guards finally investigated. There, inside the cage meant for the dog, they found Adrian. Dirty, shivering, unconscious. He had locked himself inside, hiding from the world. His mind was gone, broken beyond words. They rushed him to the hospital. Doctors whispered grim diagnoses: trauma, depression, psychosis. He muttered incoherently, sometimes staring at the ceiling, sometimes calling out one name over and over: Elena. Elena. His mother's heart bled. Nurses pitied him. They whispered among themselves, "Love destroyed this man." The family, desperate to save him, made a painful choice. They forced Elena to leave Nigeria. "As long as she is near, he will never heal," his uncle said. With tears in her eyes, Elena prayed one last prayer. "God, if you love me, change my mother's heart. Don't let my story end like this." And then she left, believing she had lost Adrian forever. Months passed. Then Marissa arrived. She was a journalist, sent to the psychiatric center for a story. But when her eyes met Adrian's, something stirred. He was still fragile, lost in shadows, but her presence lit something inside him. For the first time in months, his mother saw him respond to someone's voice. Whispering faintly, he said her name, Marissa. To his mother, she was heaven sent. She begged Marissa to stay, to help bring her son back. Marissa never tried to replace Elena. She simply brought kindness, patience, and faith into Adrian's broken world. She read to him, prayed over him, listened without judgment. One evening, his mother leaned close and said, "Maybe she is the one God sent to save you." Adrian shook his head weakly. "I can't love her. My heart is gone." But time was already changing him. Marissa's touch became his healing. She taught him to walk in hope again, to laugh again, to breathe without pain. Slowly, he began to rebuild his life. And years later, when Adrian had risen from the ashes, he bent on one knee before Marissa and asked, "Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she whispered yes. Marissa and Adrian were still newlyweds, settling into the beauty and innocence of their young marriage, when the storm began to brew. Elena's mother had been watching closely, feeding her daughter whispers of Adrian's success. She planted seeds of jealousy and entitlement in Elena's heart, telling her, "That man is rightfully yours. Go back, take what belongs to you." Elena returned, and Adrian, though newly married, could not resist her pull. At first, it was late nights at the office. Then full weekends away. Then lies about business trips. His heart became divided, and though Marissa noticed the changes, she refused to cling desperately. Instead, she chose to live happily, with or without him, making her own joy. But her silence cut Adrian deeply. It stirred something in him he didn't expect: jealousy. What if Marissa found another man's comfort? What if her laughter now belonged to someone else? He could not bear the thought. And so, he gave more of himself to Elena, throwing his whole heart into her arms, forgetting his vows and his responsibility to Marissa. Yet Marissa never wanted it this way. One night, alone and burdened, she broke. She wept bitterly before God. "I prayed for Adrian, I asked you if he was the right one, but I never waited for your answer. Forgive me, Lord. Forgive me for running ahead of you. I repent." She fell asleep that night, and in her dreams, God reminded her of her wedding vows, the promises she had once ignored. But soon came the news that shattered Marissa's world. Elena was pregnant. This was the same Elena who had been told she had no womb. To her, it was a miracle. To Marissa, it was betrayal. She felt her heart collapse under the weight of it. For the first time, she picked up the phone and called Adrian's mother, her voice trembling with pain. Adrian's mother listened, stunned. She suddenly remembered her husband's strange, sudden trip to Abuja. That night, she confronted him. His defenses crumbled, and he confessed, "I'm sorry. I failed as a father." Her heart broke, but she didn't stop there. She called her son. Adrian could not deny it. Shame washed over him as he admitted his sin. The next morning, Adrian's mother traveled to see Marissa. The young bride, though wounded, received her with joy. They talked, laughed, prayed, and for a moment, it seemed God's peace had returned. But tragedy was waiting. The very next morning, Marissa rose early to prepare a meal for her mother-in-law. As she descended the stairs, her foot slipped. A loud crash echoed through the house. Adrian's mother woke to the sound and rushed out, only to find Marissa crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, motionless. Panic tore through her chest. She screamed for the driver, and together they rushed Marissa to the hospital. On the way, she called Adrian with trembling hands. "Your wife, something has happened. Come quickly." Adrian's heart sank. He boarded the next flight to Lagos and ran straight to the hospital, where he found Marissa fighting for her life. He stayed by her side day and night, filled with guilt and fear, unable to imagine losing her because of his weakness. Meanwhile, Elena was drowning in her own sorrow. The pregnancy that should have brought her joy instead felt like chains. She wept day and night, tormented by shame. Her father comforted her, reminding her, "Though Adrian slipped away, you must remember God's mercy. You were told you could never carry children, but look at you now. Even without him, you carry a miracle. Be grateful, my daughter." His words cut through her pain. For the first time, she began to see her womb, not as a curse, but as proof of God's mercy. Back at the hospital, after days of uncertainty, Marissa finally opened her eyes. Adrian broke into tears, clutching her hand. "I will never let you go again," he whispered. A year later, Marissa gave birth to a boy. Their laughter filled the home, their innocence healed wounds. Adrian devoted himself wholly to his wife and children, promising never again to lose sight of what God had given him. Elena, on the other hand, gave birth to twins. A boy and a girl, the miracle. Though her life bore scars of betrayal and regret, she poured her soul into raising her children, clinging to her faith in God, learning to live a righteous, grateful life despite the pain. And so, in the end, both women carried a piece of Adrian. One held his heart, the other his miracle. But it was not rivalry that defined their story, it was redemption. For even in betrayal, falls, and tears, God's hand still wrote a destiny bigger than their pain. If you love interesting stories, like, share, and subscribe for more tales of love, pain, and faith. Don't forget to ring the bell. The next chapter might change your heart.
Faith can rewrite even the broken.